jump the shark. You didn't overdo the character, and it's like, yeah, maybe it's like, oh man, maybe we could have got one more movie out of Robert Downey Jr. and Iron Man. No, the ending was perfect. The entire 11-year run from Iron Man 1 to Endgame was perfect. The storylines, everything about it, like there's so many quotable lines and memorable moments, and Axe body spray moments. Like that was one of my favorite little exchanges in Endgame. And you get a lot of that stuff, and it's like, you know what, you just don't mess with it. And it's like with Black Panther, it's like, look, it's obviously the situation, the passing of Chadwick Boseman and everything like that, real world stuff, is sad and everything. But the character itself, the Black Panther character itself, is conveniently set up to be a title that is moved from one person to another. So would they have obviously loved to have Chadwick back? Obviously, and I think fans, of course, would want him back. And obviously, his death was incredibly sad and unfortunate. And it's like, well, let's not cheapen his prior movie, like you said, because not only does it cheapen the death, but it kind of cheapens his ascension into that role, which again has become, at this point, pretty close to legendary. So just move on and deal with what you have, and I think that's going to bring out a better product, because then you're not going to. Then all of a sudden, I feel like you start leaning on the past too much. And I kind of made that crack about WWE. If you're a wrestling fan, you kind of understand what I'm saying. Like, they've been promoting the same stars since I was, a kid. And it's like, look, no, sometimes you got to just let go and move on and go to the next generation. And if they can do it, they can do it. If not, I mean, you're going to have to find that next generation. They can't do it forever. Which, we got kind of a similar comment from ironically someone who comes from both the MCU and the wrestling world, Dave Bautista, who said that this is likely, or this will be, the last time the upcoming Guardians movie that he plays the character Drax, because, well, as he said, he was almost 54 years old, and pretty soon things are going to be sagging on him, so he doesn't think he's going to be able to pull off the role.
He's that old?
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Yeah, 50. I think 54 going on 55. So
good for him.
No, yeah, he's great, and I say it all the time. I love him as a character. Like, I mean, I got a whole treasure. Well, not all of them are on here, but I got a bunch of sound bites from Drax just because I love it. Like,
do not ever call me at the source.
I mean, come on, that's great. Perfectly delivered line. It makes me crack up every single time.
Nothing can go over my head.
Nothing goes over my head.
Yeah, see, I'm ready. I love it. It's so good. But it's like that's the balance that they were able to find in a lot of these movies, is seriousness, the drama, the relationships, but also the comedic side of it. I mean, we haven't even touched on Ragnarok yet, and it's like I think this is where I think the biggest difference for me personally versus the main list was, I had Thor, the original Thor, a lot higher than I think most people did. And I made a comment to you. Actually, you know what? Actually, no, it was actually right where everyone else had it. But anyways, I think it was just out of necessity that I had to put it where I did, because, again, you get to a point where you're like, well, I like all these movies, but someone has to be ranked 19.
Right.
The Thor franchise has been a lot of, but Ragnarok is just so good. I mean, we've already kind of talked about the Hulk Thor dynamic. Adding Korg and Meeks. I mean, I love the two of them. It's like the revolution has begun. I love it. I love it. And I can't. It's obviously the director, the voice.
Yeah, Taika Waititi.
Yeah, thank you. I doing all these different types of shows. Like, the worst thing, my biggest fear, is trying to pronounce someone's name, and sometimes I get tongue tied. I'm just like, I don't even want to attempt it because it's just going to make me sound stupid. But I love that movie. I think it's Jeff Goldblum in it. It's just, just everything about it. It was fantastic. But it's weird how that works out, though, is where I think of all the origin movies, Thor's probably my least favorite. And of course, we already talked about The Dark World.
Right.
But Ragnarok is so good. I mean, it kind of breaks through that elite. For me personally, I had it number 5. So it was that elite 5 group. You get past Endgame, Infinity War. I put Iron Man up there because, again, I like the original, I like the origin, and with you, I put Guardians 1 at number 4, so I had it pretty high as well. But then all of a sudden it was Thor Ragnarok. And it's like, wait a minute, you would think that at least the first 2 might be higher up as well. No, they're at the bottom third here, but this movie was great. It's one of my favorites. That's a movie, I'll tell you, that I will put on kind of at night if I think I'm going to fall asleep, or I'm just kind of going to bed, or I just want something that will put me in a good mood. I put that movie on, and I love it.
It's so, like I said, Hela she's amazing. I mean, like that's the whole, every single part of that movie is so amazing. And I have it. I have like so when I did my rankings, I was like, all right, I know the bottom, I know the top. My top 5 is solid, right? It's Infinity War, Guardians 1, Ragnarok is 3, Winter Soldier is 4, and then 5 is Endgame. And so like that's my top 5, and because Ragnarok is so good, and Waititi is amazing, and like it's just like it's just all the stuff, and look, what they do a really good job of, and they've done it kind of, they did it really not over the top, but like overtly, I would say, in WandaVision, which is play with that mental health aspect of it, play with the mentality and everything like that. And Ragnarok does a great job of doing that because, his hammer breaks, and it's like all of a sudden he's not a person anymore, right? He's not strong anymore. He can't do anything anymore. And it's like, well, like it's just a hammer. Like it's not, it's not like the end of the world. It's just a hammer, And so he doesn't, it's like, are you Thor, the god of hammers, right? And he's like, oh no, I guess I'm not, But that moment with Waititi where they're trying to pick out instruments for battle, right? And he's like, I had a hammer and I could spin it really fast and it would pull me off the ground. He's like, your hammer pulled you off? Like that's, and like, but he just the riffing on that. And there's some clips of him just like nonstop. He goes for like 10 minutes, just like riffing on all sorts of different things. And it's so good. Like, but that's the type of stuff where it's like, you can't make that stuff up. That's not, no one writes that into a script. Like that's just guys going off of each other, and like, and it shows in the movie.
Mm-hmm. No, I love it. And it's like, you seem to have a really emotional connection with that hammer.
Yeah.
And he's like, you know what? That's right.
Yeah. It's so good.
But again, it's like you think about it in such a minor role, really, so small, but it's like, you're right. I mean, pretty much all his lines were probably ad-libbed, right? I would imagine, for the most part. I mean, I'm sure there's a couple.
You would think, I mean, a lot of it, right? Like, I'm made of rocks, but don't worry. It's just like,
I'm dying just thinking about it, because like now I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna have to do Endgame, and I guess I'm pulling an all-nighter to watch all this stuff.
Yeah, right.
Maybe I'll just watch all these scenes and then go to bed. But yeah, so it's like you add in that dynamic, and there's none of it's over the top, and if it is over the top, it's on purpose, and they do it well. Like you said, WandaVision, like, that was kind of the reaction. You see all the previews, and it's like, what is this, a 1950s comedy? And you're intrigued at first because they purposely do this homage, but it's so over the top, and you really don't know what's going on until the third episode, when all of a sudden things start to, you're like, oh, okay, I see what they're starting to do with this. But it's like, you look at that, you're like, that's when I'm like, all right, you know what? In Kevin we trust. Whatever happens, that was phenomenal. I loved the first 2 episodes, I really did. But it's like, you never doubt where they're going to go, even if it does start to be a little over the top at first.
Well, and that's the thing, is like, and what he said before is like, look, we make movies, so obviously we're trying to make money. Like, that's obviously part of it, right? So that's a big part of it. Mm-hmm. But we want to tell a good story. Mm-hmm. So that's the goal, is to tell the story. And, we talked about the DCEU, and it's like, okay, DC comes out with Batman vs. Superman a few years after they just finished the Batman franchise. So now they come out with Batman vs. Superman. Then they come out with Wonder Woman, and then right after Wonder Woman is going to be Justice League, and then they're like, oh my god, Wonder Woman did really well. Okay, we need to feature Wonder Woman more in Justice League. So then they cut things on. And like, okay, throw in more. So it's like but they didn't build anything. And like you said, we don't have that connection to those characters. Like they made Iron Man in 2008. The first Avengers movie came out 4 years later in 2012, right? And so in that time, they're releasing all other movies. So we're meeting all of these other characters and getting emotionally attached to them. Then they end that saga 10 years later, right? And so it's like we're doing this for 10 or 11 years, and we're building it the right way. And WandaVision is the same way, where it's like, look, right now, like the age that we live in, I want all my TV right now, immediately. I'm going to stream it. I'm going to binge it all. And Disney was like, nope, not doing it. Sorry, we're going to release it once a week. And then that was the problem that people had with The Mandalorian. I know it's Star Wars, but like nothing happens. And it's like, you don't need anything to happen. Like he's on, like, what more do you want? You have him on these cool side missions. Like, well, what's the bigger story? Like, it doesn't matter what the bigger story. It's like, enjoy the freaking show. Like, what do you mean? Like, and everyone's always like, well, give me the next thing. Give me the next thing. And it's like, no. We're slowing it down. And like you said, they did a beautiful job of that, of saying, I know you want to know what's going on, but we're going to do this homage to television, which, by the way, if you haven't already seen the making of WandaVision, you have to watch it, because their commitment to detail on those first few to make it feel and seem like 50s and 60s television, it is unbelievable. And they really cared about that. And that was, I mean, obviously it was a big part of the show, but like in reality, it's not that big. Like they didn't have to. They could have just fudged that and like whatever, but they didn't. They went all in on that. And that to me is awesome, because you're showing a commitment to like telling the story the way you want to tell the story, not just saying, oh, whatever, we're going to do this. Like, no, they were like, no, we're going to make this authentic and really do it right. And like, people are going to enjoy it. And so, yeah, people are like, oh, the first 3 shows, like whatever. But I'm like, no. There's so many little parts in those shows that you can point back to and be like, oh my God, like this is happening. And we didn't realize it was happening. Like, it's extremely well done. And, and that, yeah.
And you spend a week talking about one episode. And that's something right. Like, look, I love, a good sitting here and watching episode of a show. But I think I just like you, we're, like I said before, we're around the same age. So, we grew up in the era of, well, if you want to record something, well, you got to figure out how to time your VCR, just record the whole 8 hours on a VHS tape and, watch it through. So, like, you had to watch things live, and they only came out once a week. Imagine, if anyone's out there at 24, I know you're not. We talked about this, but if anyone out there is a 24 fan, imagine having to watch that week to week. The amount of cliffhangers that show gives you. But there's something about it. So like you can add more detail in it. So if you're just watching a show for the first time and you just fly through the first season or whatever, the 6-7 episodes, you miss a lot. You really do. You have to watch it multiple times to start picking up on these things. But if you watch one episode, 30 minutes, you have 6 hours and 6 days, 23 hours, and 30 minutes before the next time you watch that. Or in this case, whenever it's released. The timing's not quite that, but you know what I'm saying. So you spend that entire time, if you really like the show, dissecting it. So for a span of a couple weeks, we're sitting there like, okay, what's going on? Is 50s television? It wasn't Vision dead? Where are they? Where are they in relation to the timeline? What's happening? I think we knew going into the series that it was post-Endgame, so that wasn't really a mystery. But there was still this really big mystery of, okay, like, when are they? Where are they? Is this real? What's happening? And you don't really get that if you just watch, that's over in an hour if you binge watch the entire series. Right. So, and it allows them to write that way too. And I think they did a great job of doing that. So I'm, as much as it sucks and as much as I want to watch it all when I see the first episode, I sit back and I'm like, stop, relax.
And that's it. I mean, it's really about enjoying the story, but also like, it's, where is it going? And that to me was my favorite part about that show, is like, we didn't know. there were a million different, thoughts and, okay, there's, theories and like, there was so much stuff going